Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. If you're watching via a video platform, YouTube, maybe our website, Northside Baseball, you can see the topics laid out to the right. If not, and you're listening via an audio platform only, we appreciate however you tune in. And the topics, of course, will just be a little bit more of a surprise, never a bad thing. Jason, last time we chatted a week ago, the Cubs were 3 games behind the Brewers. I had said, hey, you know what? Maybe next week it'll be a little bit better. And we are recording Tuesday for a Wednesday publish per the usual. And the Cubs are 6.5 behind the Brewers. We'll get to a playoff picture update at the tail end of the podcast. I actually wanted to start with there's your furry friend again. So we've got,
she's gonna be around today.
that's all good. I wanted to start with an interesting topic. Obviously a hot topic of choice in Cubs land lately is the lineup and some specific names that have struggled post All-Star break. And I kind of posed to you, and we can run with it however direction we want. Out of everyone in the lineup, who would you say you're most concerned with the rest of the way, and what some of the data says, and who are you least concerned with? I'll let you start, and we'll start with the most concerned side of it too. Kind of maybe some of the data has you maybe a little bit worried. I don't know if either of us are running towards the panic button with any of these guys necessarily, but maybe someone who's been struggling a little bit more and the data says it's not really trending in a great direction. So I'll let you lead that off, Jason, as we get things going.
So my most concerned is a little bit different than just straight offense.
Okay.
The guy I'm actually most concerned with is Dansby Swanson, and it's not from an offensive standpoint. In fact, if you go into some of the underlying data, he's actually been pretty fine offensively. I know the chase rate's way up right now. He tends to go hot and cold. When he goes cold, he tends to chase a lot more. It's kind of a Dansby Swanson thing. But if you look at his expected data, like his ex-WOBA, it's like his highest of his career since 2020. So there's some underlying things there that make me not so worried about Swanson. For the most part, Swanson's kind of who he is. He's a league average hitter. He's going to hit you 20, 25 home runs. He's got 17 on the season. Power's been pretty good. I know the runner in scoring position data hasn't been that good this year. Over his career, he's been better with runners in scoring position. So I'm going to throw that out as kind of small sample size, weird baseball things that happen. My concern, though, is defensively. He had the hip injury last year. And if we look kind of, in the data, and you can start to see maybe where the issues are there, and maybe where we're going forward. He's hitting on the bat. He's over 30 now, and when players get over 30, we start to see some defensive backslides. And while he's not having a bad year, he's still 2.2 FWAR on the season. We can see some defensive metrics that are going down. Like his movement laterally is usually a positive for him, and it's been a negative. And if you think about a hip injury, where is that going to maybe show? When you're using your hips, going laterally. He's fine going forward. In fact, he's a positive defender when he's attacking forward. But when he's going side to side this year, it hasn't been there. And if he was 25, I would probably shrug off a hip injury, be like, weird data. Defensive metrics can get weird in small 1-year data sample sizes. We know that. But, I'm starting to get concerns there, because if the really good Dansby Swanson is the elite defensive shortstop, and if he's just a fine defensive shortstop and an all right average hitter, it's still going to be an all right player. Don't get me wrong, he's going to be a major league starter. We got him for a few more years, but maybe 4.5 win Dansby Swanson, it might not be there. So that would be where my concern is. Because, with his bat, you always kind of said, well, if he's going to be a league average hitter, but he's going to be, elite defensively, we can all handle that. That's a more than acceptable player. That's a really good baseball player. He's been one of the best shortstops in baseball, over the course of the last 3 years since the Cubs got him. And he's been as good or anybody from that free agent class of 2020 in the shortstops, the Trey Turners, the Xander Bogaerts. He's been just as good as about any of those guys. But if that defense isn't there, then that's his best skill. And that's a concern that I have moving forward. Is he going to be the explosive defensive player, or did that injury coupled with the age, is he just an all right defensive shortstop? We already know he doesn't have a great arm. And he's managed to parlay that into still an elite defensive shortstop. But if he's not going to be great lateral and he's not going to have a great arm, we start to maybe see some kind of cracks in the armor there in the Dansby Swanson world. And that's a little bit of a thing just to kind of focus on. The guy I'm not worried about is well, actually, do you want to talk about who you're most concerned about, and then we'll get into the guys who are less concerned about?
Let's do it that way.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's hear who you got concerned. Who you looking at?
Yeah, and again, I'm not running towards the panic button. I think you probably know somewhat, Jason, based off my opinions, thoughts on a lot of Cubs topics. Like, I like familiarity. It just makes me more mentally comfortable with things. And so when I looked at most concerning, again, I'm not like freaking out about it. But for me, I put down Michael Busch, and there were a couple of reasons for it. Like, Kyle Tucker is slumping, right? We all get that. But to me, the track record, the resume is so long that it speaks for itself. I look at someone like PCA struggling at the plate. We all see it. We all know it. But that's a gold glover in center field. Great speed. Like, he brings so much more to the plate that if he's quite literally struggling at the plate, you still feel good about the other stuff that PCA does, really at like an elite level. You mentioned Dansby Swanson. I agree with everything you said. And one of the things you said is you know what you're going to get with Dansby Swanson. And so we're at a point in his career where you know what you're going to get. With Michael Busch, I have a couple of things that popped up on the radar. First off, like some of the data, 48 WRC plus since the All-Star break, nearly a 33% strikeout rate since the All-Star break. And I noticed when I was like really diving into it, he's had since the All-Star break a lot of swing and miss in the strike zone, on pitches in the zone, which to me is not really a great trend. The second thing is the familiarity part of it. He was a 26-year-old rookie, and he was buried because of the depth that the Dodgers had. But he was an unknown when the Cubs got him as to, like, what is he going to be at the major league level? And I think he is still somewhat that, because he didn't have those opportunities at all with the Dodgers. And so we haven't seen, as frequently with him, because the sample size is small. This is only his second full season in the bigs. And again, I am not saying Michael Busch is a bad player. Michael Busch is awful. Not at all. He's not. I don't think his second half is indicative of who he is as a hitter, but I just question or not, that really hot stretch he had in the first half, like for a prolonged period of time. I don't think he's that player. I don't think he is the guy he is right now at the plate. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And so I think you're looking at someone who maybe is just like an average to slightly above average first baseman, which is fine. But the concerns for me are second full year in the bigs, but he's already 27. I just haven't seen 6-7 years of numbers for Michael Busch at a major league level where I can be like, you know what? Like, I look at Kyle Tucker and Dansby Swanson, I can always say it's always going to come back to the middle. It's always going to regress to the mean. You're always going to get what you get out of Dansby Swanson. You feel comfortable with those numbers because you know what it is going to be. And with Michael Busch, I just don't have that. So it makes me slightly more uncomfortable. And again, the big numbers out of the ones I mentioned, the swing and miss in the zone is a bit perplexing. And I know you can probably sometimes see it with power hitters. And I would consider Michael Busch a decent power hitter, right? Like, he's not, cut from the same cloth as some of these other guys that are hitting like 40 homers a year. But little concerned with Michael Busch is where I kind of lean to. And it's just because of the sample size, because he hasn't been in the big leagues for 6, 7, 8 years, where I can lean back towards that in those numbers and expect him to just level it out, if that makes any sense to you.
No, that makes perfect sense. One of the things I do wonder with Busch, because you brought it up, I looked at it, he's swinging and missing about 6% more in the zone. I do wonder how much of his struggle, and it's obviously not all of his struggle, but he started to get used a little bit more against left-handed pitching there. And we kind of talked about one of the reasons why I think he was doing so well is because the Cubs were using him really well. Matt's talked about on North Side his swing changes and how they're geared really well for right-handed pitching. And he's been bad against left-handed pitching at 52 WRC plus. And everybody, I tried to warn people about this. Justin Turner's actually been hitting lefties pretty good, especially recently. I think been a little unfair to him in that aspect. Probably a little bit too fair to Michael Busch against lefties. But I do wonder a little bit if that just kind of threw him off a bit, hitting more against lefties, not really seeing, the ball all that well there. Mentally can kind of throw you off mechanically seeing those kind of guys. So I do wonder if that's a little bit about it. But yeah, that swing and the miss, that was a good pick up on you. I wasn't even really thinking about him on the radar. So nice call on that one.
Yeah. And I said we could run any direction we want. I kind of focused mine in on the core of guys that are kind of just struggling at the plate in the second half. That every time I'm on Twitter, Jason, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on with PCA? What's going on with Dansby? What's going on with Tucker? What's going on with Saya? What's going on with Michael Bush? And Bush kind of gets, in the first half, a lot of these guys were red hot and the offense was great. And I thought Michael Bush, in a sense, Jason, was somewhat underappreciated because it's not anyone's fault, but we put PCA on such a high pedestal. We put Kyle Tucker on such a high pedestal that, we really highlight and put those plays and those games under the spotlight, that Michael Bush was quietly carving out a pretty red hot first half of the season too, where some people were like, man, could he be an all-star? Like there was chatter about that. And second half just hasn't been good. Yeah, the swing and miss in the zone was the one thing that stood out to me once I dove into it. Least concerned, I'll let you run with it again. Give yours first.
Say Suzuki.
Okay.
I'm not concerned at all for Suzuki. He's kind of poised for a hot streak right now. And I think he's actually been playing a lot better than we realize he's been playing right now. Over his last 36 PAs, he's got a 133 WRC plus. His strikeout rate's under 20%. His hard hits are up. His barrels are up. He's not chasing the ball at all. Like, his plate discipline is really good. Like, these are all the signs that you see like right before a guy kind of goes nuclear for like 2 weeks or something like that, which the Cubs could really probably use somebody going nuclear for a couple weeks. I look at what Seiya Suzuki's doing, over the course of his last couple of games, last like week and a half. And he's showing a lot of those signs that you go, yeah, like that's what you kind of expect to see, like coming out of a slump, right? You expect to see those kinds of things happening. So when those things, I think, kind of do slide in, he hits a couple of home runs. I think he's going to really could be a catalyst for the offense to come through. He's such a good hitter. There's power there. He can be an important part. So he's kind of the guy I'm the least concerned about. When I was looking at the lineup, I think you can be a little concerned about Kyle Tucker. I think he'll be fine eventually. I'm not entirely convinced it's a finger issue. I was looking at kind of some of his heat maps today. Doesn't seem like pitchers are like pitching him any differently. I know there's been some discourse out there about like, pitchers aren't like respecting him anymore, and they're throwing him basically the same way they did in March and April when he was going nuclear himself. So like, it doesn't seem like pitchers are taking him any less seriously. He just seems to be a little off. He's getting a little bit off to the center, not really pulling the ball as much. I think once he starts pulling it, he'll be okay. But the one that I'm the least concerned about is probably Seiya Suzuki right now. I see that data right now. It tells me, hey, this is a guy who's going to be okay pretty soon. And if he could get a jump start, I think we'd be really in a good place. So fingers crossed that it's Suzuki. We'll see how it goes. Toronto's not necessarily a pitcher's park. Hitters can hit pretty well there. So maybe, tonight against Jose Barrios, he can start the game off a little early with a nice home run and start to kind of reward those underlying things with a little bit of that power. Who you looking at? Not very concerned at.
Yeah, it was the name you mentioned at the end of your talk about, say, it's Kyle Tucker. And again, it's just the resume.
Yeah.
My concern would be this, Jason, and you hinted at it. I'd be concerned if the finger injury was more of a problem than what is being let on or what is being reported. Then I'd be more concerned. If not, I have to go by the resume and assume that at some point he's just going to shake out of it because he's Kyle Tucker and because we have years and years worth of evidence that suggests
Absolutely.
so. Like, even like come postseason time, I'm going to feel really, really confident. One, if the Cubs make the playoffs, but I'm going to feel really, really good about having Kyle Tucker right near the top of that lineup. He could get red hot right now, Jason, and go ice cold the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season. When the playoffs roll around, I'm going to be like, thank God Kyle Tucker's on the Cubs and in this lineup. So again, it's
absolutely,
it's the and I'm not saying my thought process is like the way to go. Like it can be flawed, but how I view things, a lot of it's just familiarity, track record, resume. And for Kyle Tucker, like, I just have to believe he's going to shake out of it at some point because of what the resume says, because he's Kyle Tucker. And we have years worth of evidence that suggest, this slump he's in is not something that's going to last the rest of the season or even for like 2, 3, 4 more weeks. So I had Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think when you talk about the finger, he hurt his finger on June 1st, but like the slide started on July 1st. So,
yeah, that's what I didn't get either. Yeah.
I guess maybe he he could have re-aggravated it or something like that. And like, maybe like it's just hurting too bad and it's too late to like really fix. Like, I don't really know. I don't know his finger, but when I look at that and I think like, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense. It feels like we're kind of grasping for straws instead of being like, Oh, you know what? Maybe just like good hitters have bad months. Like Pete Alonso had a month where he had like a 50 WRC plus. Freddie Freeman had a month where he had like a 50 WRC plus. Jose Ramirez has been awful in August. Nobody's paying attention to it because Cleveland's going nuclear themselves and winning all the games. But he's got a sub 50 WRC plus in August. And you know, we're not noticing those things. We kind of notice the things at home a little bit more than we notice like the outside world because you know, I mean, I'll be honest with you. My father's a huge Guardians fan. I haven't watched an inning of the Guardians baseball since Cubs played the Guardians. Like, I don't watch a lot of Guardians baseball, and I don't think a lot of us do. But you know, I popped up his Fangraphs page just I think it was maybe this morning or yesterday, and it was like, oh my God, he's been awful in August. But we don't really pay attention to that. And you know, like right now, Kyle Tucker's worst month of the season was a 107 WRC plus. I know he didn't hit a whole lot of home runs there. He walked a lot. You know, if you look at his OPS, it was worse, but it's kind of why we use WRC plus because it fixes the OPS problem of being like, well, you got on base a lot, but still, we're going to penalize you for it by the way that they kind of scale it. But by WRC plus, he was a 7% better than what we would consider league average. So that's his like worst month of the season. And you got like Freddie Freeman, who's going to make the Hall of Fame, right? Freddie Freeman's going to be probably a Hall of Famer. And he had his month in June that was horrendous. It was so bad that, you know, we kind of forgot because we had this discussion with Michael Bush. This is why I remembered it leading up to the All-Star break. And it was like, was WRC plus is better than Freddie Freeman? Why is Freddie Freeman starting at first base in the All-Star break? It's because leading up to voting, when the voting started to close for the positions, Freddie Freeman had been going nuclear, and then he has a month where he just couldn't hit the baseball. So if Freddie Freeman is allowed like a bad month, and you know we don't like worry about every body part of him, I'm not so worried about Kyle Tucker yet. You know, it could be the finger. I don't want to completely ignore that, but it would be one thing if like the slide started June 2nd, like right after the finger. But when it starts a month later, you kind of, at least for me, I kind of take a step back and I have to think like, I don't know. Are we just looking for an answer? Like, is that the answer we're just looking for? Or is that an actual like real thing? And I don't know the answer, but I don't know. It gives me some pause. So I'm with you. I'm not worried about Kyle Tucker at this point at all. I think he'll be fine.
Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. Per the usual, recording on a Tuesday for a Wednesday publish. So game one against Toronto has not taken place. Jose Barrios against Javier Assad. I didn't have it initially on the rundown when I sent it yesterday, but a couple of roster moves today. I guess I'll just let me get your quick thoughts on this, Jason, before we talk about the rotation. Were you surprised at all that the transactions included, you know, Miguel Amaya coming back? That's not the surprising part I'm asking about, but John Birdie being DFA'd means the Cubs are now carrying 3 catchers. Did that surprise you at all?
That did not surprise me. I kind of figured once they didn't trade McGuire at the deadline, I figured they'd keep him for 2 reasons. One, Willie Castro makes a lot of what John Birdie does redundant. Like, what does John Birdie do? What's the best thing he does? He plays a lot of places and he runs the bases pretty well. That's kind of like his game, right? And the Cubs basically haven't played him at positions for a while. Now, Willie Castro is a pretty good base runner. He's probably not as good as his 2023 data says, but he's an above average base runner. He can go out there. He's not going to be like a massive base stealer, but he can get you some stolen bases. He's stolen 9 bases on the year. He can get you a base late in the game. He's a much better hitter than John Birdie. He can play all the positions John Birdie does. If we already accepted like Turner's not going anywhere, and then you kind of get to a position where, I think they couldn't lose Reese McGuire at this stage. If for any reason Miguel Amaya hurts himself again or Carson Kelly goes down, who's the backup catcher? Is it Moises Ballesteros? Because the team had a chance a month and a half ago to make him the backup catcher and they didn't. So I would have a hard time believing that going into the playoffs, the Cubs would all of a sudden say, you know what, he wasn't ready in June, but on the biggest stage in baseball, let's shove him back behind the plate. And if you look at a lot of his data at AAA, he hasn't been throwing out a lot of base runners this year. I don't think it's because of his arm. His footwork's poor. His body's kind of weird. He needs more practice. He's not ready to be a major league catcher. So if not Reese McGuire, then who do you have? So I think what the Cubs are doing is they're going to go with kind of an like Reese McGuire is the 26th man, and the Cubs barely use the 26th man, right? They barely used John Birdie. They barely used Luis Vizcaíno last year. They barely used what was it? God, I can't even. Luis Torrens, I think was like here a couple years ago, like barely played. Like Mastroboni, like these guys, they just sit on the bench under, right? They just sit under the bench under Counsell. They barely use their 26 guys. So, if their 26 guys going to be Reese McGuire, who already knows the pitching staff, who's been in the organization and they trust, and isn't some like random that you're picking up off the street in September and basically being like, hey, learn all these pitchers, then I think that's probably what was always going to happen. What I'm actually more surprised about is that they announced Ben Brown as the starter, and then today we're like, no.
It's going to be
Assad. That one actually surprised me a lot. I wasn't looking forward to that. I know Assad was kind of set up to start one of the doubleheader games next with the Brewers that's upcoming, and this kind of takes him out of that. So I thought was kind of an interesting kind of thing to happen. I guess Ben Brown will probably just take that spot against the Brewers now in the doubleheader. I guess I don't really know, but that one did surprise me. What did you think about it? A little surprised.
Yeah, the keeping McGuire and DFAing Birdie did not surprise me. It is, it's uncommon to see a team keep 3 catchers, but again, the Cubs bench has been so uncommonly horrific this year that sometimes you need to, throw a little curveball. Like I just viewed it through, you tell yourself, okay, the Cubs are DFAing John Birdie. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. And then I tell myself, nope, the other alternative is the Cubs are DFAing Reese McGuire. And everything you just said, it's like, well, what if Amaya gets dinged up again in estimates time? What if it's Carson Kelly? And I don't like playing that what if game necessarily, but I also am just like, right now, I'd rather have Reese McGuire than John Birdie for what they bring to the table and the value and all of that. So I was fine with that. The Assad part, that you said you were surprised about him starting, I never really dove into it too much, but when I saw the switch, it was like, oh, okay, Assad starting. So I was just like, all right. I didn't think about it long term, like you were mentioning Assad lining up to start one of those doubleheader games next Monday against the Brewers, which is a good thought to have there. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see how he looks. Good to have him back. I like Javier Assad. Yeah.
I like Assad. He's fine.
Yeah. Northside Baseball Podcast, Mitch Woodmeyer, Jason Ross. Let's stick with the rotation. Just bringing up the question, like, do we believe it's sustainable? And I'll start by saying, like, to me, I don't know if you have similar thoughts, Jason, but I think they've been so damn good. Like, even if you put like circumstances aside, like Shota missed a chunk of the season, Tayon's on the shelf now, Justin Steele's been gone for pretty much the entire season, will miss the remainder of it. Ben Brown has been on kind of a roller coaster ride. Like, you put all that aside, the rotation to me has still been pretty good. Post All-Star break too. Like, the offense has been struggling, but a lot of the starting pitching, they've been getting innings, quality starts, good numbers from their guys. But if you ask me, in the postseason where we know it's different and games get condensed, do I worry about the sustainability? I do a little bit for a couple of reasons. The first one's Matthew Boyd. It's such a good year, but he's at 135 and 2/3 innings, his most since 2019. And more than his last 3 seasons combined. So he's thrown more innings this year than the last 3 years combined. That worries me, talking about like the general wear and tear. You talk about if that's sustainable for him to keep chugging along. And we've already seen Cade Horton's innings and pitches kind of pulled back, which is fine because we knew that was coming. I'm just curious, like, if the Cubs make the playoffs, obviously, hopefully they do, like, what does it look like? Because I'm assuming you have Shota as your 1, Boyd as your 2, but like, who's the 3? How much gas will be left in the tank? Those are all questions I have kind of floating around in my mind.
That's basically the same thing that I said on my cheat sheet. I mean, I wrote, I think Shota and Boyd are going to be fine. Like, if you look at Shota Imanaga, over his last 6 starts, his K percentage is up to 27. It was down at about 21% of hitters. Now it's up to 27. If you go even after the White Sox blow up, he's striking out almost 40% of his hitters right now. Chase rate's up, swing and miss is up. So like, he seems to have figured it out. I think a lot of it is his fastball placement has been a lot better since then. So like, Shota, not worried about it at all. And like, you can't even say that he hasn't faced good teams. He's faced Boston, the Yankees, Milwaukee, the Reds, the Cardinals. Like, he's been facing teams that are in the playoff race. Like, they're in good offenses. Like, it's not like he's not seeing good teams. The White Sox is the worst team he saw, and that's the team who blew him up. So like, I think we're doing fine with Shota. I'm not worried about Matthew Boyd. He's a big boy. When we worry about like rookies and stuff like that, I'm worried about Cade Horton's like build up and everything like that. Matthew Boyd is 34 years old. And I kind of talked about it, I think, on a podcast in the past, but I kind of mentioned it again. I don't think that the Cubs are super worried about like long-term Matthew Boyd. And I know that's kind of dystopian. Like Matthew Boyd is a human being, and we're kind of talking about him as if he wasn't. Like if he was just a commodity, like a car that you burn up their engine and you throw it off to the side. But I so like I'm trying to remember, when I'm saying this, like he is a human being. I don't want him like hurt long term. I don't want him to have like issues down in the past. I'm sure the Cubs don't either, but I also think that the Cubs are kind of looking at Matthew Boyd as like, they have Matthew Boyd for 2 years, and this is just going to be Matthew Boyd, right? There's like if it doesn't, if he's not pitching late into his 30s, the Cubs he's not under contract here. He's developed. I'm not super worried about his innings. I don't think the Cubs are super worried about his innings. His velocity's not down. He doesn't really seem to be showing like massive signs of like fatigue right now. So I think he's fine. Where I start to have concerns is specifically playoffs and like what's next. Is Cade Horton going to be in the rotation the rest of the year? Like he's good enough to do it. Like talent-wise, he's good enough to be the third pitcher, I think, in a starting rotation in the playoffs. His Ks are trending upward. He gets lots of ground balls. He has a 3.14 FIP over his last 5 starts. But what are they doing with his innings here? They've pulled back on some of that a little bit, right? He could have gone longer of the last couple of starts, and they kind of pulled him. So, maybe they're going to limit him a little bit that way, but we're talking about 1 or 2 innings at a time that way. And we're not talking about like the kind of like, I think the full stop shutdown that we were probably all expecting. So like, what are we doing? When we get to the playoffs, then is Tyon your third best playoff starter? Is Horton your third best, or is Tyon your fourth? Like none of that sounds great. I know Assad's back, but Assad shouldn't really be a playoff starter. He's a fine number 5 at a major league level, but he shouldn't be a playoff starter. I guess, and this is, I think, where like the deadline issues are kind of like showing their ugly head. And you could say, well, like there's a world where this isn't a problem because they Dodgers their way to a World Series where they just like bullpen people to death. But I don't think they can bullpen people to death. I think adding Ben Brown to the bullpen will help. Maybe having Assad as like kind of a long guy helps. I think Andrew Kittredge is great. Mike Petriello, if you guys don't follow him on Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever, he writes for MLB.com. Best data stuff, like sincerely the best data stuff. I had a conversation with him on Blue Sky a little bit yesterday. And he was he does the Nerdcast on ESPN. So Mike's the best. I love Mike. But he pointed out that the Cubs bullpen's K percentage is way up since the trade deadline, which doesn't surprise us. They added strikeouts there. I think the bullpen is better, but like, is it good enough in the playoffs to like carry a Jameson Tyon start like once a series? I don't really know.
Yeah.
So that's like where my rotation is sustainable issue is like, we'll talk about the playoff picture later. I'm not worried about the Cubs making the playoffs. I don't make the playoffs. I'm pretty sure they're going to make the playoffs. Like I think they'd have to be significantly worse than we're seeing them right now to not make the playoffs.
Something terrible would have to happen.
Yeah, it really would. But like, is the rotation sustainable? No. And I think we're seeing those holes right now. Even if they had Mike Soroka, I think we'd still be saying like, I don't 100%. Know. Is the rotation sustainable? Because I don't think the bullpen's good enough, and I don't think the rotation's good enough. And I don't know. I think this is where they missed. Again, going back to it, like, all right, maybe the prices on the starting pitching was so astronomical you don't get it done. Then fix the bullpen a little bit more, right? Add a couple other like really, really good players, and doesn't take anything around from Rogers, who I think has looked interesting in the very small time we've seen him. I think Andrew Kittredge, he threw an immaculate inning. How cool was that? But he's probably not. He's not Duran. He's not Birdsell. He's not Bird. I know those guys have struggled in their own right so far, but those guys have track record. They have skill. They have data behind them. And I don't know. We'll see. So that's kind of how I feel about the rotation. I'm not sure how you feel about it, or kind of feeling the same way, or this kind of the same kind of unease with it.
Yep. Same boat as you. And you brought up 2 points that I want to hit on briefly that I completely agree with. One, if Michael Soroka never got injured, I still would feel uneasy about the rotation. That's not a shot at him. It's just how things are currently constructed and built for the Cubs in this rotation. I would still have concern. Second thing you brought up, the Matthew Boyd angle of the Cubs, it sounds kind of crappy to say, but it's the truth. You know how people, it's the nature of the beast, it's the business
Yeah.
side. They'll be like, the Cubs know, Matthew Boyd knows. He's 34, he's on a 2-year deal. The Cubs are going to run that into the ground. And when you brought that up, it made me think of like Derrick Henry in the NFL for like a comparison. Like typically in the NFL, I'm sure you know, when a running back turns like 30 or even 29, that's usually the cutoff age where it's like, yeah, we're not signing running backs to a big deal. And Baltimore brought in a 30-year-old Derrick Henry last year, second most carries in the NFL, 325, gave him a 2-year extension, which is pretty unprecedented for that age and the dollar amount he got, with the sole purpose, and Derrick Henry knows it, like Baltimore is going to run him into the ground the next 2 years. And the Cubs are doing with Matthew Boyd. It is go, foot pushing down on the accelerator, 2-year contract, get everything out of it that you can. And Matthew Boyd's not naive to that. He's not. He's a professional baseball player. He knows the gig. I just hope, the fingers crossed that it's not like his body doesn't, start telling him other stuff down the stretch run here where it's like, whoa, we're working way more than we have the past few years. So that was my only concern with it. But yeah, I have the very, very, very similar thoughts to you, Jason, on the rotation. I'll have serious questions. Honestly, like regardless of how the rotation looks the rest of the year, they could be lights out. They could go into the postseason and everyone's like, holy crap, the month of September, the Cubs statistically have the best rotation in baseball. I'll still be worried about it going into the playoffs because it's just different.
I think we have to be.
It's a different beast. It's a different beast. Northside Baseball Podcast, Mitch Widmeyer, Jason Ross. We're going to talk about match in a second, but let's start with your minor league report if you're ready for that. Report? Yeah, let's go with that.
Minor league report. Cool. So let's talk. We'll go to Iowa first. I think Iowa is always the easiest place to go talk about. Start off with Owen Casey. Owen Casey's crushing it right now. Still, he only struck out 2 times last week, which is just crazy to talk about with Owen Casey. That he goes a whole week with striking out just 2 times. This is somebody who was striking out 35% of the time through vast stretches of his minor league career. So his strikeout rate is just really dropped. He hit another home run. He's got a 252 WRC plus, looked really good. Flip side, the guy that you don't really expect to strike out is Moises Ballesteros, and he struck out 4 times this week. You just don't see Big Mo do that very often. He didn't have a great week, 176 batting average, but to see Ballesteros strike out 6 times is just not something, or 4 times, sorry, just not something that we're very used to seeing. So kind of a weird week for Ballesteros. 2 players who had really good weeks. Kevin Alcantara had a nice week, hit a double, 175 WRC plus, only 22 strikeouts, 22% strikeout rate. We like to see that from Kevin. Jonathan Long has just been on a tear right now. 228 WRC plus last week, struck out less than he walked, struck out 11.1% of the time. And the crazy stat is he hit a triple. Johnny Long's not speed demon, but he hit a double, had a triple, hit a home run. He's a really cool little prospect. We're going to see what the Cubs end up having to do with him because, he's going to be major league ready next year. Pitching side, we already talked about Javier Assad being promoted. That's going to kind of change the Iowa situation. Spencer Turnbull had a nice little run in Iowa's rotation. He went 5 strong. I wouldn't be shocked to see him as a bullpen piece at some point in terms of depth. Bad news on Brandon Birdsell. He's done for the year. He only made a couple of starts this year. He had an oblique injury, came back. Velo was a little down. Cubs shut him down. So he's done for the year. I really liked him entering the season as somebody who was going to make a major league start this year. And obviously that didn't happen. Still wouldn't completely write him off. Pitchers do this sometimes, but bummer year there. Also on the pitching side, still haven't seen Jackson Wiggins yet. Greg Zumach mentioned that, a lot of this is it's not really an injury thing. It is a bit of trades gamesmanship going on, limiting innings and everything like that. So, I think we just have to wait it out and see when we see him again. I still don't think it's a 0% chance that we'd see him in the bullpen in Chicago. I don't think it's likely, but maybe in September. Jefferson Rojas, Christian Hernandez, 2 shortstops, kind of on different paths right now. Rojas was promoted to Knoxville. He has not really found his footing yet. Batted ball data just hasn't been great. Hasn't really been hitting the ball that well. Did walk 4 times. Approach has been fine. He's just going to need a little bit of time there. Christian Hernandez hit 2 home runs down at South Bend. I know a lot of people kind of wrote him off a bit. When we were talking about him a few years ago, he was supposed to be baby A-Rod, and he's never been baby A-Rod, but he's been better than league average at South Bend. He's still young enough. There's still projection with the body to get him to where he needs to be. So, Christian Hernandez has been doing well, hit 429 for the week. And then we'll talk about a couple other shortstops before we get a little bit of other prospect updates. Ty Southazine down in Myrtle Beach is one of the most interesting prospects, I think, the system right now. He had a 247 WRC plus last week. He has been absolutely on fire with a near 500 on base percentage over the course of the last month. He walked 30% of the time last week. His walk rate is above his strikeout rate. He hasn't hit a double in like weeks. All singles. He can only hit singles right now. And he only has 5 doubles all season. So he's a fascinating prospect in that, like, he is showing not just no power, but like negative power, it feels like, but his approach is elite. The good thing about Southazine is first year, I think he's one of these strange prospects where he was too good to be in Arizona Complex League. So they bumped him up to Myrtle Beach, kind of in his first year. But physically, he's not ready for Myrtle Beach. And you can see that just with how few kind of doubles and everything he's hit this year. If you can get this guy to 7 home runs, like Steven Kwan at shortstop is like not an impossible like outcome here for Southazine. But right now, 1 home run sounds like a gargantuan like task for this kid. So I think we're just gonna have to kind of wait it out and see what we get. But he's fascinating. Like he's fascinating right now, and just like following his on base percentage is so much fun. So I just kind of put him in your back pocket. He was a 4th round draft pick. He was slated to go to Tennessee this year. So he really should be a freshman in the SEC, and he's playing in Myrtle Beach, and he's he can't stop walking. Juan Cabada is playing down in the Dominican League. He's 17, so he's not even 18 yet, but he has a higher OPS plus so far down there than either Moises Ballesteros or Jefferson Rojas did. So keep his name kind of back pocket. He was one of their biggest IFA signings the last little run. So keep Cabada down in your back pocket. And then one recent draft update: Cade Snell made his debut. He was 5th round draft pick out of Alabama, first base outfield. Hasn't really done much, but he just got there. And then MLB.com released their recent update on top 100, post trade deadline and everything. We've got 4 Cubs in the top 100. Owen Casey's the only one in the top 50. He's sitting at 45. Moises Ballesteros is at 52, so just a little bit outside of it. Rojas at 62. Jackson Wiggins at 84. I know a lot of times you get kind of fired up about like where these guys go, and Casey only at 42, he should be 35. It's essentially the same thing. I kind of look at like these things as think of them very fluid. Being 45 versus being 28, there's not really much of a difference there. Just like being 52 and 84, there's not really a big difference there. And if you're looking at this, you're like, why isn't it Jonathan Long on here? Kevin Alcantara, he's been a top 100 prospect. Why isn't he on here? The difference between 75 and like 150 is virtually nothing. It's personal preference. So when Jim Callis makes these lists, he might be a little higher on one guy, a little less high on another one. You're going to see another list that has Jonathan Long on it at like 85. I'm sure there's going to be people out there who thinks he's a top 100 prospect. Don't get so wrapped up into the numbers. I kind of use them just as kind of like temperature gauges. Like, are guys going up? Are guys going down? Where do people kind of see them? So, I know we have a tendency to get real fired up about those like spaces, but I'm a little less fired up about like the industry rankings. I think the Cubs have an interesting top end of the system, and but it also kind of highlights like, what are they going to do with these guys in the winter? I kind of brought it up the last time we talked about the trade deadline. What's the plan here with some of these guys? So I think that's going to be a fascinating look, kind of over the hump with all of this.
I like it. Always learning new stuff with that minor league report, new names too. Potentially the next Steven Kwan at shortstop. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, it's like it's like a 5% outcome. Like it's probably not going to happen, right?
Yeah, but it's fun floating the idea out there.
But it's fun, the only idea. I think we always we get, if you kind of show that ceiling, like what is possible, it doesn't have to be Steven Kwan at shortstop for him to be good. Like, you don't have to hit a lot of home runs to be shortstop, but South Azine's an interesting prospect. And anytime we can talk about some of the, we talk about the big guys, but it's always fun to talk about the guys in Myrtle Beach, because right now, Ty Southazine could be anything. I mean, he could really be anything. He's probably going to be nothing, because that's what most prospects are. They just turn out to be nothing. And I know, again, that sounds dystopian when we talk about that. These are human beings and everything, but they probably aren't going to make it big. But if Southazine does make it big, the version of Southazine that does make it probably looks like a Steven Kwan, where he's making a ton of contact, he's walking a bunch, he's not hitting a lot of home runs, but he's just like a real annoying hitter to deal with. So he's fun. I think he's an interesting prospect. You throw him in your back pocket. We check in on him every couple of weeks, and we see what happens. Maybe he'll hit a home run here soon, and we can all feel really good.
Let's pivot to talking about a player who at one time was a very, very highly rated prospect in the Cubs system, Matt Shaw. And
yeah,
it's
my guy.
Yep. It's kind of crazy looking back at it now, Jason. Trade talk, trade rumors, trade rumor mill, all that stuff. When you were talking about, not you, I'm saying when everyone was talking about a bat for the Chicago Cubs, it kind of always circled back to Eugenio Suarez. And, since the trade to Seattle, small sample size, Suarez has not been good at the dish for the Mariners. Meanwhile, Matt Shaw keeps ascending for the Chicago Cubs. And it like Jason, we talk about struggles with the lineup recently and what's going on since the All-Star break with some of these guys. I'm sitting back wondering, imagine what it would look like without Matt Shaw since the All-Star break, which might sound crazy to people, but he's been that important and he's been that good for the Cubs. It's
he really
very, very cool.
He's been fantastic. And he deserves it. He worked so hard this year. The amount of changes that he has, I mean, sincerely, if you haven't, go back and watch his first game. Just you can go find the clips from his very first game in the Dodgers. And I mean, that swing, I think I kind of went like Matt Shaw blind, like prospect blind a little bit from him. I'd watched a lot of him, coming up through the minor leags. So I kind of got used to his mechanics, but man, you go back, it's piss ugly. It really is. It is brutal. His swing was awful. Big, ugly leg kick. He's got the weird toe in stand. He's so far off the plate. I mean, his swing was just not very good, and his mechanics were not very good. They kept hitting with it, so you didn't really want to change it, because maybe that works at the major league level. He wouldn't be the first major league hitter that you looked at and you went, man, that is a swing only a mother could love. But he's gone through some massive changes, and he doesn't look like the same hitter when he goes up to the bat. He's got some aspects that are still kind of there, but he doesn't look very similar to what he did. And so you look at the changes he's made. He made all of these changes basically on the fly at major league level, one at a time. It was a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And, throughout the time, I think it's got to feel good for Matt right now, because I know the Cubs aren't winning a lot of games right now, but from, Tokyo to the All-Star break, the offense was carrying Matt Shaw. And since the All-Star break, Matt Shaw has been carrying the offense. and I think that's a good role reversal. I think he's got to be feeling great about it. It's hard when you are on a team, and I know I've done this because I've been an athlete for 31 years of my life now. Of those 31 years, I've played on teams where, we've won games and I haven't been much of a help at the plate. And you feel bad about yourself, kind of like everybody else, like you're kind of mooching off of everybody else. And I'm sure he kind of felt a little bit like that for those first couple of months. But the changes are huge. It kind of, I think the best part about him is how much he's pulling the ball right now. I think we're seeing
with power too.
Yeah, the power. And that's actually why he's pulling the ball so much. Why I'm so happy about it. The exit velocities are good, but they're not like elite. He's like sitting around like 88 miles an hour average exit velocity since the All-Star break, which is fine, but it's not like elite, right? But one of the guys that he kind of reminds me of right now is TJ Friedl from the Reds. And he reminds me of TJ Friedl because TJ Friedel's not an exit velocity monster either, about 87 miles an hour. So Shaw's, since the All-Star break, got him a little beat. But But the one thing that Friedel does is he has a 117 WRC plus, even though he doesn't have elite bat speed and he doesn't have elite exit velocity, because he pulls the hell out of the baseball, right? He just pulls the hell out of the baseball. It's easier to hit a home run when you pull it. It's a shorter distance. Isaac Paredes, Cody Bellinger, they get it too. They're similar hitters. They have been good hitters because they pull the hell out of the baseball. And what is Matt Shaw doing? He's pulling the hell out of the baseball. And when you pull the baseball, you have higher batting averages, you have higher slugging, you have higher everything. The ball lands more when you pull it, whether it lands over the fence more or it lands in good places. And he's doing that. So he doesn't need to be an EV monster to be like a 20 home run hitter. So he's not a big dude. He doesn't have huge exit velocity. He's got good exit velocity. He's going to make a lot of contact. But he's pulling the hell out of the baseball. And as he does that, this is good. This is really good, because this can be the hitter I think we always wanted Matt Shaw to be. He'd be a very good hitter if he pulls the ball a lot, and even with his bat path that he has, like, he'd be a very good hitter. So I'm really excited for him. I'm sure he's really excited for himself too.
If you had to guess, and I mean, hell, I'm sure there's data out there somewhere that exists to give a somewhat of a concrete number. I'm not talking about like day-to-day tweaks and adjustments, Jason. I'm talking like, how many noticeable, sizable differences do you think he's made with his stance and all that at the plate so far this year? Because it's definitely more than, where he was, what he was doing against the Dodgers in Tokyo to now. Like, there's been a few more peppered in between, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just off the top of my head, things that I know he's changed. One, he's moved up in the box. Two, he's moved a lot closer to the plate. He used to be one of the furthest off the plate. He's much closer today. His front foot has gone from toe in, very closed off, to open. And even in the last couple of games, I've noticed he's more open than he was 2 weeks ago. So notice that front foot, it's even more open. His hand placement has changed twice. It went up a little bit. Now it's much higher. His leg kick has gone from big leg kick to small leg kick to toe tap back to small leg kick. So, like, I mean, you add them all up, what's that, like 7 or 8?
Yeah.
And those are just the ones that I've noticed. I think he's clearing his front side more. And that doesn't even take into account, like, he's moved the hit box, like where he's making contact with the baseball, to much more in front of the plate, which isn't necessarily a mechanical change, but like an approach change. So we've seen approach changes, we've seen 7 or 8 swing changes, and he's done all of this in a major league season against the best pitchers in baseball. And this is where we're at right now. And that's unbelievable what he's been asked to do. It's unbelievable what has come out of it. Now, do I think he's going to hit like 9 home runs every 3 weeks? No, he didn't turn into Cal Raleigh. So, like, as excited as I am, and as much as I'm going to sit here and I will tell people I told you so for that this was going to happen. Like, I've been very impressed with the changes that he was going to make. And I figured we'd end up at a place where he was a very good hitter. I don't think that, like, this is probably, he's not going to be this good. So like, if you think he's going to hit 10 more home runs the rest of the season, probably not. But he doesn't need to. I think he's showing proof of concept. And there was a lot of discussion earlier in the season, and I just kind of want to kind of flesh it out here for a quick second. But there's been a lot of discussion about, did the Cubs trade the right third baseman? And just to give people some context, on the season, Matt Shaw is up to a 92 WRC plus. Cam Smith is at a 98. So they're very similar in terms of WRC plus. If you look at Cam Smith since the Cubs series, he has a 58 WRC plus, which is not particularly great. And it's not like a BABIP issue. His BABIP's just fine. So, like, that's like a real Cam Smith issue. It's not like we're really looking at somebody who's had a lot of bad luck. But, if we look at the same time period for Matt Shaw, he's got a 114 WRC plus. So, like, we'll see where it ends up going, but I know that there's a lot of people who are, like, concerned that, like, Cam Smith's going to be like the Lou Brock trade, which, again, it's like we got to move on past that to begin with. But Shaw's been doing better than Cam Smith recently. I don't know where they're going to end up in their careers. None of this means that one of them's going to be better than the other, but. And I think when we have these discourses, these, like, kind of like panic moments of Matt Shaw, Cam Smith's having a good week, Matt Shaw's having a bad week, I think we just got to kind of bring it back, realize that progress is not linear. Sometimes, to get where you're going, you take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. But then after all these steps forward, and back, you walked a mile. And I think that's kind of where Matt Shaw's been. He's made steps forward, he's come back, he's made steps forward, he's come back, but he's made progress. And I think that's all that we really care about is the progress that Shaw's had. So I've been really impressed with him. It's really great. I'm happy for him. The defense has been great. The offense is matching it. I think the Cubs got a guy.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things with seeing the ability to tweak and the want to get better with Matt Shaw on top of that is I think every professional athlete has a little bit of ego at a minimum, right? There's a little bit of ego tied into it. There's some stubbornness tied into it. For him to be able to be like, yeah, I will adjust, switch, listen, be open to any ideas. I think that's really, really, really cool to see. And we probably see it more out of rookies than if he was like a 10-year vet and they were going to him to try to tweak whatever. But I still think it's cool to see a professional athlete, a highly touted prospect like him, put the ego, the stubbornness that might exist, or maybe it doesn't, aside and be like, yeah, let's just figure this out and do whatever it takes. Because he certainly, I haven't gone back and looked recently, but when you brought up that series in Tokyo, I can see him batting with where he's closed off the super high leg hook.
Man, it's awful.
Foot's turned in, and now it's just, it's a different guy at the dish, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, he does.
Let's finish up talking about the playoff picture. I believe I led the podcast by saying when we chatted last week, the Cubs were 3 back of the Brewers. Now they're 6.5 back. This part's going to sound crazy. I'm sure you're aware of it, Jason, but just saying it out loud sounds weird. The Brewers are tied with the Tigers for the biggest division lead in baseball at 6.5 games, which just like the Cubs are in second place, but the Brewers are tied for the biggest division lead in baseball. It's just like snap of a finger. The Brewers won't lose. They're on a 10-game win streak entering play on Tuesday. They won't lose.
No, they won't lose. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, one of my good buddies is a Cubs fan, and he was texting me, I think it was 2 days ago, and he said, I have bet Brewers money line every day the past couple weeks. He's like, I should be able to retire in a week or two. I was like, they just won't lose. So the Cubs are 6.5 back, but still safely, not only in the playoff hunt, but they're the top wild card spot right now. Last week when we talked, I think it was like, hey, if playoffs started today, it'd be Cubs Mets. I just think it's fun to bring it up. If the playoffs started today, it'd be Cubs Padres. The Brewers and Phillies would get buys as of today, and it'd be Cubs versus Padres, Dodgers versus Mets. And when you kind of look at the picture, the playoff picture in the National League, at least, Jason, the Mets and Cubs have been two teams who have just been kind of struggling lately. I don't want to say tail spinning, sinking, any of that, but two teams that are struggling to kind of find some solid ground, the Mets and the Cubs. But Cubs still have the first wild card spot. Playoffs started today. They'd be hosting the Padres.
Yeah, I looked at Fangraphs. Fangraphs currently has them as a 97.2% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even like one of these seasons where like you kind of have to worry about it. The Reds or the Cardinals are the closest thing to them with 11.5%. It would like the Cubs would have to epically collapse, and as bad as like it feels as though they really haven't been like that bad, right? They lost a series to the Cardinals on the road. I know it's frustrating, but they beat the pants off of them on Saturday. They lost by 1 run on Sunday with if Birdie holds on to the base at second base.
Because the 2 hits followed that, right? Wasn't it Nico and Dansby?
Follow that. Yeah, Nico and Dansby. They tie that game, maybe. They might win it. It's just it's like these small little things that are kind of going against the Cubs right now. And then, the damn Brewers go into the bottom of the 9th inning against Edwin Diaz. He hasn't given up a game-winning home run in a very long time. He gives up game-winning home run to Isaac Collins, who I refuse to believe that's not a created player. Brewers have. On
Monday, too, they let off Bryce Terang against a lefty, Andrew Heaney, leadoff homer for Bryce Terang, who's not a home run hitter. I'm like, oh, sweet, Brewers are going to do it again. And that was on Monday.
And now I'm curious, what his splits are against lefties, because I gotta see.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just know he let off against the lefty, which caught my attention. And in general, I don't
against him. He's not terrible. He's not like Michael Busch bad, but he's a 94 WRC plus, which is not good.
Lead off homer set the table for the Brewers last night.
It's ridiculous right now where the Brewers are doing. The one thing that I'll say is this, right? And it's kind of what I thought about, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen or not, but the one thing that I just keep remembering is that the Brewers are kind of on a magical run right now, and if you've seen the movie Moneyball, that the movie especially, the book not really, but the movie really kind of makes it about that magical 20-win run that they had, right? They win these 20 games. They started off the season not so good. Here's this plucky underdog team, which is less of a plucky underdog team if you actually know much about the Athletics at that time. It wasn't like they had like Hudson and Zito and Miguel Tejada still. So yeah, they lost like Giambi and those guys, but it's still a pretty good team. But they end up winning those 20 games, and you know what? They go to the playoffs and they lose, right? They lose. They lose. They lose. They don't win the World Series. They don't even go to the World Series. So so I know the Brewers are like on this epic run right now. And I don't want to take anything away from the Brewers. Like, good on them. All these wins count. They're not just luck. Things are happening. Awesome things. Like, great for the Brewers, and what their playoff run is going to look like has no impact on what the playoff run that the Oakland Athletics had in 2003, right? It just is what it is. However, I think it's good to remember that like teams go on these epic runs and then they stop, right? And when the magic wears off, eventually the magic wears off. And you don't always have to be super hot headed into the playoffs. The 2006 or 7 Cardinals won 83 games. They lost 9 of 11 games up to the playoffs. 9 of 11, go to the playoffs, win the darn thing. So like, and I think that's one thing that we remember. A lot of times we talk about the Cardinals who won 83 games and they won the World Series. People forget, like, 2 weeks before the season ended, they were like 10 games over 500. That was a very good Cardinals team who had a really bad end of the season, which kind of kind of deflated their win record, made them look significantly worse than they really were. Then they go to the playoffs and make good things happen. So, where the Cubs are right now, I know it feels like you're probably feeling like everything's bad. I know I have said, well, that's enough baseball for me tonight, multiple times in the past couple of weeks, and turned the game off in the 7th inning because I just couldn't anymore. So like I'm with you. If you've been frustrated, I get it. But I think it's good to remember that it's August 12th. It takes one good Cubs week and one Brewers bad week for this thing to be like 2 games the opposite way. There's a 5-game set coming up with the Brewers soon. It's while the division feels like it's slipping away, and I think right now we have to kind of accept that it's probably not going to happen at the divisional level, right? It's just probably not. As much as I say the Cardinals probably aren't going to make a playoff spot with 11.5% chance, the Cubs have it's like a couple percentage points higher to win the division right now. It's probably not going to happen, and it just is what it is. But I don't think any of those things mean anything for either team in the playoffs. I still think that the Cubs are a good team. I do question whether the rotation is going to be good enough, but I do think it's going to balance out a little bit. And there's probably going to be a point between now and the end of the season where the feelings on both two teams kind of shift. And whether that shifts just for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I don't know. But I do think that there's going to be a crossover point where, the Cubs are the kind of the team on the top, and that moment, maybe not in the division standing wise, but in that moment, like feeling wise, momentum wise.
Like, so they win 7 of 8, the Brewers lose, 4 of 8 or 5 of 8 or something.
Yeah, it's going to happen at some point. And the Cubs, like, it might start tonight. Who knows? So we'll see. I'm trying to remain like kind of hopeful and positive, because I know right now when things feel bad, like, it's really easy to kind of like slink into that, like, kind of like, woe is me, everything's bad, nothing's ever going to be good again feeling. But it's a good reminder that, when I talked about Matt Shaw, he's probably not going to hit, 10 more home runs the rest of the season, because, usually when things are really good, they're never truly that good. But, when things feel bad, they're usually not that bad either. So hopefully, maybe they just go on, they can sweep the Blue Jays, and we all feel real good because they went in and they swept one of the best record teams in baseball. I wouldn't expect it, but it's the Cubs are going to get hot at some point. Might as well be tonight.
Yeah, I don't want the Cubs to get into the habit of like only beating up on bad teams, but I don't know if you recall last week, Jason, I'd mentioned a 5-game set, including that doubleheader with the Brewers starting next Monday. And then after that, they have 24 straight games against teams below 500. Mm-hmm. That is the time to. I want to see them take 2 out of 3 from Toronto. But if there is a time on the schedule where it just lines up. You get 24 games in a row against teams sub 500. That would be the time. We'll see. Javier Assad, Jose Barrios going there. I don't know if you saw. I was looking ahead and trying to line things up. I think game one of that doubleheader against Milwaukee next Monday, and we won't chat again until then, at least on the podcast. It's slated to be, as of right now, would be Cade Horton against Freddie Peralta. Game one of that doubleheader, which would be sick. That'd be
that'll be a fun one. They matched up. They were supposed to match up earlier this season.
Yes.
I think it got rained out.
Yes.
I think it got rained out.
Yeah,
I was really excited about that one. Now I think back, I think it got rained out. So
it's lining up that way, where it would be game one of the doubleheader. I believe would be Horton and Peralta.
I think that was my birthday because my birthday is in June. They played the Brewers by that series, and I think that was the Tuesday. That was the night that I was supposed to. It was my birthday, and they were supposed to play, and then they ended up pitching against each other or something like that. Rain out pushed Cade Horton. I didn't get to see it. So well, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah. We'll have to see, but Cubs starting a 3-game set tonight. Of course, by the time you listen to this, game one will have concluded, but 3-game set against Toronto, 3 against Pittsburgh, and then 5 massive ones against the Brewers. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer. This has been the Northside Baseball Podcast.